getting a PhD in creative writing?
Literature and creative writing.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, and you're 26.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever not been in school?
Yeah. I took 2 years off. I'm in my first year, so I don't know if I have all that much to say. I mean, what I got out of my master's program was like a really intense and supportive community of writers. But I think that was unusual because we all kind of meshed. In my PhD program, what I'm getting out of it is that I don't have to work in an office job. I don't have to work 9 to 5, you know. I mean, very basically. I mean, I'm frustrated most of the time, like having to read post-colonial theory and stuff. Not that I don't think that that is important, but I'd rather be reading narrative theory or, you know, those kinds of things. But I mean, I definitely come from a different politics than some of my professors, so it is frustrating that they haven't read, you know, as much queer literature, for instance, or as much feminist literature, or even like graphic novels and comics and that sort of thing. But, you know, whatever, you can't really expect them to be like minds.
Teachers.
Yeah. The project I'm working on is interested in looking at eating disorders from, you know, sort of a crisis point. And it's also interested in the discourse surrounding eating disorders in terms of like media representations and also the way it's treated in young adult narratives, as well as in like feminist discourse. So what I was doing with that piece, which is in the anthology, is looking at a passage in which young women who have eating disorders are kind of mocked and made fun of, which is like the way it goes these days in terms, you know, like if you watch Mean Girls or any of those other, you know, sort of like pop films. Now the thing to do is not so much to sympathize, but to mock,
Ostracize.
derogate. So I'm interested in looking at that dynamic and to try to like critique that a little bit.
And Kathy Acker's role?
Well, I was interested in reading that interview with her. I was really put off because her intent in that passage is to expand the circle of compassion for women who act out the role of submissives sexually. So her intent is to say what submissive women are doing is actually very transgressive and really awesome, and we should support that and like embrace it like as feminists. And yet in the same turn, she's saying, but anorexics, bulimics, women who participate in plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery and stuff, those people, those women, we just toss away, you know, they're not part of our circle of compassion. So I was trying to kind of attack that a little bit through plagiarism. Yeah, I guess I was trying to show intertextually how women with eating disorders are disdained and sort of like tossed aside and like treated as though they're like these stupid creatures who are just like, you know, over susceptible to mainstream pop culture and whatever, and sort of like not giving them any agency. So you see it in that passage from Megan McCafferty's Sloppy First, and you see it in this interview with Kathy Acker, which I think like speaks to both experimental literature and feminist discourse. So those were kinds of the things I was doing. My manuscript in full kind of explores like a number of different discourses. Yeah, but I mean, since I'm still like working on it, I don't really want to like characterize it as.
So the way Kathy Acker frames that problem, it's very 80s, right? It's very it's like the pro-Madonna position versus the vestiges of false consciousness, kind of, you know, in Kathy Acker's formulations. How do you see that that's so going on 30 years ago? How do you see that discourse unfolding now? Like, what does Kathy Acker's formulation have to do with current formulations, which you just described as being a little bit
Right.
different?
I'm still kind of working through that. My manuscript is like very much in progress. But part of what I'm interested in is my character like going through the process of like developing a feminist consciousness and like going through like the history of feminism and like coming up to now, which of course is like everything. I don't know. I don't know how would you characterize feminism in terms of like eating disorders? I don't even know if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that is. I was wondering if if you've got kind of a historical trajectory in play, because Acker certainly, to me, feels like an older.
Right.
I mean, in terms of the history of representations of eating disorders, which itself is a relatively young field.
Yeah.
So she seems. I don't know how it plays out in the '90s, and I didn't know. Not familiar with your contemporary examples.
Right.
Being of Deborah's generation.
Yeah. I don't.
Well, are you going to get into the webs, the Anna websites and stuff? Or I presume you already have. And well, I want to ask you about that. I mean, you have or have not broached it yet in the.
I have not broached it explicitly. I have talked about inspiration, but yeah, I'm hoping to get into that more. I mean, yeah, like I myself am new to feminism, so like part of this is like me going through it myself and sort of like seeing more of it, because when you first get into it, it starts to. For me, it felt very prescriptive. Like this is what like a good feminist should be like and do,